Captain Alex Rhodes stood at the helm of the Cavalier, the flagship of the Earth Federation, as the enormous planet Zyphora loomed ahead. The cityscape stretched out beneath them, a dazzling blend of sleek, alien architecture and strange, glowing flora. It was a world known for its peaceful neutrality, and a place where the galaxy's most influential species came together for diplomacy. Today, however, the stakes were higher than usual. Earth was preparing to negotiate with the Gyran, an ancient and powerful alien race, and the Federation had sent one of its finest diplomats, Captain Rhodes. Alex wasn't exactly thrilled by the idea. He had seen many different species in his travels, but the Gyran had always struck him as prideful, even arrogant. The princess of their people, Zyriel, was a figure of legend. Rumors swirled that she was as beautiful as she was powerful, and many had warned him to be cautious around her. But Alex's focus was on the mission, not the individuals. He had seen it all before: diplomatic games, alien egos, and endless talks that went nowhere. What truly mattered, he knew, was securing Earth's place among the stars. As the shuttle descended to the surface of Zyphora, Alex glanced at his fellow crew members. They were all dressed in formal attire, prepared for the upcoming summit, but Alex felt a certain tension in the air. He had dealt with alien politics before, but there was something about this mission that felt different. The Gyran were powerful, and Princess Zyriel was rumored to be their most brilliant and dangerous leader. The shuttle finally touched down, and they were greeted by the Gyran delegation. The atmosphere was charged with expectation. Alien dignitaries from various parts of the galaxy stood around, all eyeing the humans with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Alex shook hands with the Gyran ambassador, a tall, slender being with silver skin and elongated features. His eyes, glowing faintly, fixed on Alex with a sense of appraisal. "Captain Rhodes," the ambassador said in a voice that seemed to reverberate in the air, "welcome to Zyphora. Princess Zyriel will meet you shortly." As the ambassador led them through the grand halls of the palace, Alex tried to suppress the feeling of unease that was growing in the pit of his stomach. The Gyran were beautiful, yes, but there was an undeniable coldness to them, a sense of superiority that made Alex feel like an intruder in their world. When they reached the throne room, Alex was momentarily taken aback by the sight before him. The room was vast, with high ceilings adorned with intricate alien designs that seemed to shift as if alive. At the far end of the room stood Princess Zyriel herself. She was striking, tall, with flowing dark hair and sharp, angular features. Her skin shimmered with a subtle, ethereal glow, and her violet eyes seemed to pierce through everything they saw. Zyriel's presence was commanding, and yet there was a coldness to her gaze that made Alex's skin prickle. The moment she locked eyes with him, Alex couldn't help but feel like he had been sized up, judged, and found wanting. "Captain Rhodes," she said, her voice smooth and melodic, yet carrying an edge of authority, "I trust your journey was comfortable." "Yes, Princess." "Thank you for your hospitality," Alex replied, keeping his tone polite but firm. He had dealt with enough royalty to know how to maintain a sense of professionalism. Zyriel smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. There was something in the way she observed him that made Alex uneasy, as if she was looking right through him. "You must be quite proud of your species," she said, her tone light but dripping with a subtle mockery. "To have risen so far in such a short time among so many other, more established civilizations." Alex felt his jaw tighten at the implication. He had dealt with arrogance before, but something about the way Zyriel spoke stung. Still, he didn't let it show. "We do what we must, Princess," Alex replied, his voice steady. "Humanity is a young species, but we have always been resourceful." Zyriel's lips curled into a small, amused smile. "Resourceful, yes, but resourcefulness does not always equate to wisdom." Her words hung in the air like a challenge, but Alex refused to rise to it. Instead, he remained composed, focusing on the mission at hand. We seek peaceful relations and mutual understanding, he said, trying to steer the conversation back to diplomatic matters. But Zyriel wasn't finished. Tell me, Captain Rhodes, she continued, her tone suddenly becoming more personal, almost playful, what do you think of us? Of the Zyran, we who have stood the test of time, we who have shaped the galaxy as we see fit. Alex wasn't sure where this conversation was headed, but it was clear that Zyriel was testing him, pushing him to respond in a certain way. Most people would have been flattered by her attention, but Alex had learned long ago not to be swayed by charm or beauty. He knew she was trying to bait him into saying something she could use against him later. I think, Alex said carefully, that the Zyran have their place in the galaxy just as humanity has its own. We're all part of a greater whole. Zyriel's smile faltered for a brief moment, and Alex knew he had struck a nerve. It was a subtle shift, but it was enough to confirm what he had suspected. She wasn't used to being dismissed so easily. How? Interesting, she said, her voice now colder. But I wonder, Captain, what happens when you find yourselves out of your depth? The challenge was clear now, and Alex realized that Zyriel wasn't just testing his diplomatic skills, she was testing his very character. She wanted to see if he would buckle under her gaze, if he would show any weakness. It wasn't just about politics, it was about power, and right now she was trying to assert hers. Alex held her gaze unfazed. I suppose we'll find out soon enough, Princess. The tension between them was palpable, but Zyriel simply nodded, her expression unreadable. We shall see, she murmured, before turning away and addressing the other delegates. Let the summit begin. As Alex followed her out of the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was far from over. Zyriel was not what she seemed, and he had a feeling that the true test of this mission had only just begun. The days following the initial meeting with Princess Zyriel were tense, but Captain Alex Rhodes remained focused on the mission at hand. The summit was in full swing, with debates and discussions held between various species and factions. Earth's role was critical, and Alex had to ensure that the Federation's interests were protected. However, something about Princess Zyriel lingered in his thoughts. She was intelligent, powerful, and undeniably beautiful, but there was something more to her. She wasn't just a princess, she was a force. One evening, after a particularly heated discussion between the Zyran delegation and a group of Andromedans, Zyriel invited Alex to a private dinner. The invitation was formal but laden with an air of challenge, as if she wanted to continue their earlier conversation in a more personal setting. Alex accepted, knowing that refusing would only make things more complicated. The dinner was held in a grand, circular room overlooking the alien city of Zyphora. The table was set with food that Alex had never seen before: shiny, iridescent fruits and intricate dishes filled with unknown ingredients. Despite the elegance of the setting, the conversation remained cold and calculated. Zyriel sat across from him, her violet eyes studying him intently as she sipped a glass of liquid that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. The conversation started innocuously enough, with small talk about the nature of their respective civilizations and the challenges of maintaining peace in a galaxy full of competing interests. But soon, it shifted. You know, Captain Rhodes, Zyriel began, her voice soft but firm, I've been thinking about our earlier exchange. You seemed uninterested, almost detached in a way that I find intriguing. Alex raised an eyebrow, sensing the challenge in her words. I'm not sure what you mean, he replied, trying to keep his tone neutral. Zyriel leaned forward, her gaze never leaving his. I mean, most would be flattered by my attention. Most would be eager to prove themselves worthy of my favor, but you simply brushed me off. Almost as though you didn't care. Alex could feel the weight of her gaze pressing down on him, but he refused to let it affect him. I don't take kindly to flattery, Princess, he said, his voice steady. I prefer to focus on the bigger picture. Zyriel's lips curled into a smile, but it was one laced with something darker. The bigger picture, she repeated. Yes, of course. But what if the bigger picture requires more than just diplomacy? What if it requires strength, courage, willingness to fight for what you believe in? Alex didn't respond immediately. He knew where this was going. Zyriel wasn't just testing his ability to negotiate. She was testing his resolve, his character. She wanted to see if he had what it took to stand up to her. She continued, her voice growing more intense. You see, Captain, I have lived a life of privilege. I have been trained in the ways of the Gyran: strength, strategy, intellect. I have fought in battles that would break lesser beings, and yet I find myself questioning. If humans are so resourceful, if you truly believe in your species, then why do you shrink from challenges? Why do you allow yourselves to be content with what you've achieved, rather than pushing further? Alex could feel his patience thinning. He had heard this rhetoric before. Zyriel was trying to provoke him, to get him to rise to the bait, but he wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of losing control. I don't shrink from challenges, Alex said, his voice now firm, but I also know when to choose my battles. Diplomacy is the most powerful weapon we have. It's not about brute strength or power. It's about understanding, compromise, and moving forward together. Zyriel's smile faltered, but only for a second. Her gaze softened and she leaned back in her chair, studying him carefully. You sound like a true diplomat, she said, almost as if tasting the words. But tell me, Captain, what would you do if I were to challenge you? If I were to test your strength, your intellect? Would you still stand by your words or would you fold? Alex's heart rate quickened. He knew that this wasn't just a hypothetical question. Zyriel wasn't asking for a philosophical debate. She was asking for something more, something personal. She was daring him to face her on her terms, to prove that he wasn't just a diplomat, but a man capable of handling whatever she threw at him. You want to test me? He asked, his voice steady. Then let's make it clear. I won't back down from any challenge you set before me. Zyriel's eyes sparkled with amusement, but there was a flicker of respect in them now as well. Very well, Captain Rhodes, she said, her tone cool but filled with a strange excitement. You've accepted. We will see just how resourceful you truly are. The next day, Zyriel arranged for the challenge to take place. Alex was taken to a secluded training chamber deep within the palace, an arena, if you could call it that. It was a large, circular room with high walls, equipped with strange alien devices that Alex had never seen before. The air was thick with tension, and Alex could feel the anticipation hanging in the room. Zyriel stood at the center, waiting for him. She was dressed in combat attire, sleek and form-fitting, designed for agility and speed. Her hair, which had been loose during their dinner, was now tied back in a tight, functional braid. She looked every bit the warrior she had claimed to be. You've read the rules, Zyriel said, her voice carrying the authority of a leader. The challenge will test your strength, intellect, and ability to adapt. You will be pitted against me in 3 trials, a test of physical endurance, a test of strategy, and a test of wit. Do you accept? Alex didn't hesitate. I accept. The first trial was physical, a test of stamina and strength. Zyriel led him through a series of grueling exercises designed to push both their bodies to the limit. They ran through obstacle courses, climbed walls, and sparred with combat dummies. The tasks were not easy, but Alex quickly realized that this wasn't just about strength. It was about strategy, about finding the most efficient way to complete each task without wasting energy. Zyriel, for all her physical prowess, was clearly used to relying on her alien technology to gain an edge. Alex, on the other hand, had nothing but his wits and his determination. He used his experience from countless missions to outthink her, taking shortcuts and finding ways around the obstacles that made the tasks seem easier than they were. When the trial ended, Zyriel was visibly impressed. She had expected him to falter, to tire out, but Alex had shown resilience and cleverness in ways she hadn't anticipated. There was a brief moment where their eyes met, and for the first time, Zyriel seemed to acknowledge that there was more to this human than she had originally thought. The second trial was one of strategy. Zyriel set up a simulated battlefield, a complex scenario that required them both to command an army of drones against each other. The objective was simple: defeat your opponent's forces using the most efficient tactics. But the battlefield was dynamic. New challenges would arise, and the environment would change at random. Alex approached the task with methodical precision, analyzing the terrain and the resources available to him. He didn't rush in. He carefully observed the situation and adapted as the battle progressed. Zyriel, however, took a more aggressive approach, sending her drones into battle without much thought for the long-term consequences. In the end, it was Alex's careful planning that won him the trial. Zyriel's forces were scattered and defeated, and she had no choice but to admit that his strategy had outclassed hers. There was no denying it. Alex had beaten her at her own game. The final trial was a test of wit. Zyriel set a series of puzzles and riddles before him, each one more complex than the last. The riddles were designed to test not only intelligence but also creativity and the ability to think outside the box. Zyriel was quick with her answers, but Alex was relentless. He solved each puzzle with a mix of logic and intuition, never once faltering. By the time the final riddle was solved, Zyriel stood in front of him, her face unreadable. She had been bested in every trial. For the first time, she was the one who was surprised. "You were right, Captain Rhodes," she said quietly, her voice a mix of frustration and admiration. "You are resourceful. I underestimated you." Alex stood tall, his expression firm but not arrogant. "I told you, Princess," he said. "Humanity may be young, but we've got something the others don't: the ability to adapt, to think on our feet. We don't back down from challenges. We face them head-on." Zyriel's gaze softened, and for the briefest moment, Alex saw a flicker of respect in her eyes. She didn't speak again, but the challenge had been met. And in the silence that followed, they both understood that something had changed between them. The trials were over, but the tension between Captain Alex Rhodes and Princess Zyriel remained. After the last challenge, Zyriel had been silent, her usual air of confident superiority shaken. She had come to Zyphora believing that humans were naive and inexperienced, but Captain Rhodes had proven her wrong at every turn. There was no doubt now that he had the intelligence, strength, and resolve to face any challenge thrown his way. The following day, the summit resumed, but Alex could sense that things had changed. Zyriel was different. She no longer spoke to him with the same aloofness she had before. Instead, there was a subtle respect in her gaze, as if she was seeing him for the first time, not just as a diplomat but as a worthy opponent. The weight of their encounters still hung in the air, but neither of them mentioned the trials. They both knew that they had crossed an unspoken line, a line that neither had been prepared to face. For the next few days, the atmosphere at the summit remained tense but professional. Delegations from various species continued to discuss trade agreements, borders, and military alliances. However, the connection between Alex and Zyriel could not be ignored. It was an unspoken understanding, an acknowledgement of each other's strengths. The princess no longer tried to outshine Alex, and Alex, in turn, treated Zyriel with the respect she had always demanded, but now there was an underlying sense of equality between them. One evening, after the summit sessions had ended for the day, Alex was walking through the gardens of the Zyran Palace, enjoying the cool night air. He hadn't expected to see Zyriel, but when he turned a corner, he found her standing near a fountain, gazing at the stars. Her usual royal attire had been replaced by something simpler, an elegant, dark robe that allowed her to blend into the night. She was alone, lost in thought, a rare moment of vulnerability that Alex had never expected to see. "Princess," Alex called softly, not wanting to startle her. Zyriel turned, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she gave him a small smile, one that wasn't filled with the usual pride but something else, something softer. "Captain," she replied, her voice quiet, almost distant, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I could say the same," Alex answered, his tone light. "It seems we both need some space after all the excitement." Zyriel chuckled, a sound that was both warm and genuine. "Perhaps," she said, walking closer to him, "but I've been thinking about everything, about you." Alex raised an eyebrow but said nothing, allowing her to continue. "You surprised me, Captain," she said, her gaze not leaving his. "I came here expecting to prove that humans were inferior, to show you that the Zyran had always been the superior species. But you," she paused, as if weighing her words, "you showed me something different, something I didn't expect." Alex took a step closer, his curiosity piqued. "And what is that?" Zyriel's gaze softened, her shoulders relaxing as she spoke. "I thought I understood what it meant to be powerful, to be the best. But now I see that true strength doesn't always lie in domination or control. It lies in adaptability, in the ability to survive and grow in the face of adversity. You've shown me that." Alex felt a strange warmth spread through him at her words, but he kept his expression neutral. "I'm glad I could change your perspective, Princess. But don't mistake this for something more than what it is. We've both proven our worth. We've both shown each other what we're capable of." Zyriel nodded, her smile faltering for just a moment. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "but that's not all I've realized. There's more. Something deeper." Alex didn't know what to say. He wasn't sure if this was a trick or if Zyriel was truly opening up to him. After everything that had happened, he wasn't sure if he could trust her completely. But there was something in her eyes that made him hesitate. She wasn't looking at him as a prince or a ruler now. She was looking at him as a person, and that made all the difference. "You've come to understand humanity better," Alex said, his voice even but with a hint of warmth. "But I think you've also come to realize that no one, no species, is truly superior. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, and it's those differences that make us stronger." Zyriel's gaze held his for a long moment, and then, finally, she spoke again. "You're right, Captain. I've been so focused on proving my superiority, on maintaining the strength of my people, that I lost sight of what truly matters. Strength isn't about overpowering others, it's about understanding and working together. You've shown me that." Alex could see the change in her, the softness that had replaced the harshness. It wasn't just about the trials anymore. It was about something deeper, something that neither of them had anticipated. The walls between them had come down, and in their place was a connection, a mutual respect that went beyond their roles as leaders of their people. For a moment, the silence between them was comfortable, a quiet understanding that neither needed to rush to explain. Then Zyriel broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "Have you overlooked me, human?" she asked, her eyes searching his face for an answer. Alex's heart skipped a beat at her words. He had heard her say those words before, but now, in this moment, they felt different. The challenge was gone, replaced by something more profound. He had never overlooked her, not truly. He had simply been focused on the mission, on the bigger picture. But now, standing in front of her, he saw her not just as a princess or a leader, but as someone who had fought and struggled just like him. She was no longer just a figure to be admired from afar. She was someone he had come to respect, someone who had earned his trust. He took a step closer, his gaze softening. "No, Princess," he said quietly, "I never overlooked you. I simply didn't know you. But now I do." Zyriel's eyes brightened, and for the first time Alex saw a glimpse of something more than just strength and pride. There was vulnerability there, a sense of self-awareness that he hadn't seen before. "Perhaps," she said softly, "we can build something new, not just between our species but between us." Alex didn't answer immediately. The weight of her words hung in the air, and he knew that things could never go back to the way they had been. The trials, the challenges, they had all been a test, but now they were something more. They were the foundation of a new understanding, a new partnership, and maybe, just maybe, a new beginning. As they stood there in the quiet garden under the stars, Alex realized that their journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. But whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had shown its strength, and the galaxy had learned not to underestimate them. And neither would Zyriel.